everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my sewing room. Today we are going to be doing a project for Halloween, and specifically I'm actually making a project for my mom. So a couple of months ago, I think this was like back in August, my mom decided out of the blue that she really wanted a Halloween vest this year. And that way she could like dress up, but she lives in California, so it wouldn't have to be sweatery. So since she was so passionate about wanting this vest, I decided, sure, let's go ahead and I will take her on basically a video call. She can help me pick out fabric for her vest and I will make her a Halloween vest. So that is what we did. And at first, when I went to Joann's, she picked out this super cute dog fabric here with all these dogs dressed up in Halloween costumes, which I thought was so cute. And then about a week later, she was like, wait, actually, I want a different fabric instead. And she picked out the fabric that I used for my Gunny Saxoween dress last year, which is this really fun, kind of like a brown black with the gold on it, and it has kind of a slight metallic to it. Then I had the two fabrics because I couldn't return this at that point. I'd already washed it. And when I went to go look at the pattern that we chose, which is Butterick 6902, it's this pattern right here. First off, I applaud Butterick very much so because this is a plus size pattern. It is incredibly size inclusive. It actually goes up to a 60-inch bust and a 56.5-inch waist. That is freaking fantastic. And it includes the vest, the pants, and also shorts. So thank you, Butterick, for making such a size inclusive pattern. That is great. But when I went and I looked at the instructions of this pattern, I realized that this is a bag-lined vest. So there's really nothing stopping me from making this vest reversible. So my mom doesn't actually know it yet, but I am going to make her a reversible Halloween vest so that when she feels like wearing something a little bit more fun and silly, she can put the dogs on, and when she feels like wearing something just a little bit more spooky, she can put it on with the gold and black side out. So yeah, I thought that that was a really fun idea. It's very easy to take something that is bag lined and make it reversible. The one thing that I did have to look up was how to do buttons that are reversible, and actually that was super easy too. Basically you just sew buttons on both sides of the fabric. The only difference is, of course, one time it will button right over left, the other time it would button left over right. So very easy. So that's what we're going to do. I am going to be making some alterations to this pattern, namely that my mom wants a longer vest. So this one does stop just below the waist, and although my mom is short-waisted, she told me specifically how long she wants it from her shoulder measurement down to like the bottom of the vest. So I am going to do that for her. The other thing here is that this vest sadly comes with fake pockets. You put decorative welts on this, but there's no actual pockets. And since I'm doing this reversible anyway, I figure we're just gonna forgo the welts entirely and just have no pockets or fake pockets or anything like that on the vest. It's just gonna be plain. So other than that, and other than doing a little bit of size alterations, those are the only changes that I'm going to be making. Now the size alterations are a little bit like, I just hope they work. I have her measurements and I have a whole slew of measurements for my mom, but she doesn't live here. She lives in California, like I mentioned. So yeah, I am going to give this to her when I go visit her in California and hope that this works. Keep your fingers crossed for me. I won't be able to show that in the video because I will have to have this already edited and done by the time that I go and see her. So I'll let you know maybe on the community tab or something like that if it works, and I'll share a picture of her there, or at least on Instagram for sure. So do be sure you're following me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And of course, click subscribe here so that you can see things like my community tab when I update that. So I have already cut my pattern pieces out, and I am just going to make those length and size alterations and go ahead and cut out all of my pieces. So as it turns out, in looking at this pattern piece, it really doesn't need much lengthening at all. This is a 25-inch ruler, and my mom wanted a 24-inch long vest. As you can see, the 25-inch long ruler actually fits in the pattern piece. Now, of course, it just fits, so like that's not really allowing room for seam allowance. And then the other thing here is that this vest comes down in a point, and it's shorter up here at the center front and also at the sides. So it's coming in a point, as you can see right there on either side of the center front. And so I talked with my mom about it, and I'm going to lengthen this 1 inch because this would be about 23 inches. That way the center front still is as long as she wants it, and then we'll go down a little bit here. The other bit that I was talking with her about is that this vest pattern has quite a bit of ease in it. So although her measurements say that she would really be a size 36 according to the size chart, according to ease, she's not. She's like between a 32 and 34. So I'm going to make her a 34 actually, and probably taper in a little bit more at the bust because her bust is actually an even smaller size. And then hopefully that will get us the right size vest pattern. So just FYI, you probably can't really tell how pointy this is because of the pattern, but this sewing pattern makes up to have apparently the pointiest darted boob area in the history of pointy boobs. Like, this could give 1980s Madonna a run for her money, never mind the 1950s bullet bra. So I'm going to have to redo the darts on this because this is ridiculous. The back darts are totally lovely. I have now put darts in all 8 pieces, the 4 fronts and 4 backs, and I'm going to redo the darts in the fronts because, yeah, this is ridiculous. By the way, I am actually pretty much following the pattern for making this vest because it does make up basically into a reversible vest. It's just that it tells you to use, you know, a lining as opposed to an entirely other fabric. So what I'm doing right now is I'm making the ties that tie on the vest, and I've decided to make 2 sets of them, one of each fabric, because I mean, I don't know if my mom wants the ties on both sides. I mean, she doesn't know it's going to be reversible even, but she did like the ties from the get-go, like in the pattern. That was one of the elements about the pattern that she really liked. So I'm using a tube turner right here. I've just scrunched the tube onto the tube turner and put the little wand in and twisted, and then you just pull that out the other side. I will link these down in the description below if I can find them on Amazon. I am pretty sure they have been there in the past, or I know they've been there in the past, but sometimes they do seem to be out of stock. So yeah, I'm making 2 sets of these ties, and I tried to like make the pattern visible. Oh god, I wound up cutting their faces in half. I tried to like get the puppy faces on it, for example, and then I think I tried to get the cats on the other one. It will add a little bulk by having this inside both, like, you know, no matter what, you're gonna have a set of ties inside plus a set of ties on the exterior, but if she doesn't like them, she can cut them off, no big deal. Basically, I have now put the center back seams together, and once these are done and pressed, they are going to get attached to the back pieces of the vest, like to the side seam area, into that seam allowance, so that you don't wind up with any raw edges. Speaking of which, I'm not serging any of these pieces because with a bag lined anything, all of your raw edges get encased. So yeah, I'm skipping that step that I would normally do. I am also continuing to do the 5/8 inch seam allowances, which normally I always do 1/2 inch, like when I'm altering patterns and stuff, but because this pattern isn't getting that much alteration, I'm sticking with the pattern's 5/8 seam allowances. So let me go ahead and continue with this, and I will show you what these look like when they are attached to the backs of the vest. So the ties are now attached. They get sewn on for a few inches here, and this is the side seam here. And now what's happening is I've put together the shoulders of like each fronts and backs, you know, together. And now I am starting the bag lining. So I have all of these edges pinned, almost every single edge. It's everything except the side seams that are pinned together. So the arm size, the hems, the entire like neckline and front opening and front, you know, the bottom of the front, all of that is pinned and gets sewn together. One little thing that I want to point out on here is that like when we get to this is a little slash in the back that stays open like that in a little V, and basically you go and you do your 5/8 inch seam allowance right up until you hit this seam right here. This is the center back seam, and then you stop and then you start again on this side right here, and that keeps everything nice for that point there. So once I do all of that, I'll clip all of my corners and curves and stuff like that and turn it right side out, and then I'll show you what happens with the side seams, because that's kind of funky how we put the side seams together with bag lining. So I've turned this right sides out after doing all of the edges, and to press this, you basically go in like right here at the edge and feel the seam allowance, and then rock it forward until you're right on the edge of the seam. Do it for like a few inches at a time, and then come in with your iron and just press that section and move on to the next section. And you get a nice clean press that's right at the edge. So now that all the edges are pressed, we get to the kind of complicated part. Basically, we have to put the side seams of the vest together here, and we have to do it kind of in a loop. So the dog print sides get put together, right sides together, but these sides also get put together, right sides together. So you just keep going around like this. So you go almost all the way around doing right sides together of the both fabric prints together, and then you leave a tiny little gap at the end so that you can basically turn it so that all of the seams are to the inside, and you'll have a little part where you'll just slip stitch it by hand. So this is as much of the side seam that you can kind of get sewn together. So you can see I did the whole dog side, and then I've done just a little bit of the other side. I've done it through so that it goes past the tie here, and then I've just done like about an inch and a half or so over on this side over here, and then that gets turned. And you can see this area right in here. This is what's going to get slip stitched by hand. And I suppose you could do it by machine if you really wanted to, but I'm gonna do it by hand just so that that stitch kind of disappears like the rest of the seam. And then everything is going to get nicely pressed. I'll probably press it before I stitch it, to be honest. And then the sides are done. So now that the sides are done, it is time to look at buttons. Now, this vest pattern only calls for 4 buttons, which I think is way, way, way too little. Like, if you put your buttons this far apart, they are completely going to gap. So I'm looking at 5, possibly even 6 buttons, but I have 5 on here right now. And of course, you need 2 sets of buttons. So really, you need 10 buttons. I don't know if you can see these right here, but that kind of is the hard part because they need to be the same size. They have to go through the same buttonhole. I don't know why I put them on these sides, because actually the gold ones are for this side and the black ones are for this side. I really wanted to use these purple ones because I thought they would have picked up the purple in the dogs so nicely, but they are not the same size as these gold ones. Unfortunately, they almost certainly will require a bigger buttonhole. So unfortunately, it's just going to have to be black because that's what I have in the stash, and these are the same size. So I think that 5 buttonholes will work. As you can see, they're still really far spaced out. I mean, these are over 2 inches apart, which I do not like to do for buttons because they have the chance of gaping in between. But I'm not sure that I have a 6th button of either of these, so I might have to go with 5. But yeah, I'm gonna play with the spacing a little bit and see, and then we're gonna do some buttonholes. So quick little buttonhole tutorial for anyone who might be interested. This is a 1-step buttonholer foot. You basically just pop the button that you're going to be using in the back here. I opted to put the gold one in there just because it's gonna fit a little easier in the buttonhole foot. And then you just pop that foot onto your machine, and you pull down this little lever right here, and you put that behind the little peg on the buttonhole foot right here. Now I have marked my buttonholes on the vest. I just mark them out with chalk. You can see one right here. I do a horizontal mark where I'm going to start the edge closest to the edge, and then also a vertical mark this way, and then that is going to come around right here. And you want to start your needle where that mark is, and make sure the rest of your fabric is as flat as possible in the back. My machine has quite a few buttonhole stitches. I'm just going to go with this narrow one right here. And I always like to decrease the stitch length to a 0.3. Sometimes if you're marking with chalk, it can be hard to see through the little window of the foot here. So I'll stick a pin like right where the start needs to be, right at that apex. And then I will just slide that underneath until I can see where that pin is going in and center that place instead. Put my foot down see that it's actually a little gone off. There we go. Let's center that there and then slide my pin out. Cool. Now we can start that. A buttonhole is super, super easy to do. On these Brother machines where you actually have like a push option start, you don't even have to use your foot pedal if you want, but that means disconnecting it from the machine. I'd rather just leave mine attached to the machine, so I'm gonna just do it with my foot. Hands free. And we have a buttonhole. Now there are two methods of opening a buttonhole that I think both work pretty equally well. One is with a very, very sharp seam ripper, such as like the Clover white ones. I really like these. And you can just insert the seam ripper on one end and rip a little bit. And then I like to go to the other end and then rip the rest of it open. And if there's any strings in the middle, you can get those out. That way you kind of like diminish the risk of going all the way through by suddenly having it jerk by doing one end at a time. The other method that I like is by using a buttonhole punch, such as this one. This is this brand right here, but I know that there's lots of them out there. I'll link to one down in the description. And basically you just take the hard matte or wooden side, put the buttonhole over the top, put your punch right here, rock it back and forth. Since these are large buttonholes, I then have to move down the line and do it again. And we again have an open buttonhole. And now it's time to sew on the buttons. Now these buttons, I have the ones here that have the holes in them, and then I have the shank style buttons for the other side. I'm going to sew the hole style ones on first because otherwise I can't really access them as well, and then do the shank one on the other side. I've got the button on the one side and the button on the other side. And with the buttons added, the vest is done. It's a little pattern clashy with my gunny sack dress on underneath, but otherwise I think it's really, really cute. I hope it fits her. I won't find out until, well, it'll be before you're seeing this video, but after I finish editing this video, because I am actually going to go with my mom to Hawaii. And so I'm going to give this vest to her then. And again, I will post a picture of her probably on my community tab here, otherwise definitely over on Instagram, probably the day that this video comes out, just so that it's linked together. So yeah, this is the one side here, and then we can switch to the dog side here. It is slightly challenging to like get a good grip on these buttons because they are backed with additional buttons, but it's not too bad. It's just that, you know, there's something hard behind them. So you kind of have to pull them through the buttonholes as opposed to the normal like push a button through a buttonhole method that I feel like I normally use. But yeah, here's the dog side. I think I actually like the dog side a lot better, so I'm curious to see what my mom feels, how my mom feels, since she doesn't even know that the dog side is going to exist at all, because that is the surprise that I've made it reversible. So here's the whole vest. And honestly, it's so super cute that I might wind up making one for myself as well, because I think this is just a really great piece to have on Halloween. Now, the one thing that I noticed that I did actually do slightly wrong with this vest is that I should have actually made my buttonholes just a little bit closer to the edge. I did my math wrong when I was subtracting the seam allowance from where the buttonhole markings were on the pattern, and so they wound up being, I think, 1/4 inch farther from the edge than they're supposed to be. I think they're supposed to be 1/2 inch from the very edge of the vest. I actually started them 3/4 of an inch, which I thought seemed odd, but I thought I did it the way that the pattern told me to do it, and since I was basically following the pattern with everything else, I decided to go with it, and in hindsight, I checked again and my math was wrong. So yeah, but I think they'll be fine as is. Like, it's still laying nice and flat, so hopefully it won't affect the fit on my mom. If it does, I can always move the buttons farther over. The buttons are 1/2 inch from the edge as well. So overall, I'm really, really happy with how this project turned out. I hope that my mom likes it as well. And if you wind up making a reversible vest yourself, please do let me know down in the comments here. Tag me over on Instagram if you make it, because I would love to see your vest as well. Again, this pattern is super, super size inclusive, so that is so great of Butterick for doing that, and I wish that they did that with all of their patterns, because we need more size inclusive things, right? So if you like this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon. And if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week, with my sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and other costuming content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on my Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at Lady Rebecca Fashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below, or you can send me a super thanks right here on YouTube. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon and Mirage. Thank you all so, so much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing and happy Halloween!